Welcome to Indie Authors Tell All, where independent voices take the mic. This podcast is for those engaged in or interested in independent publishing, from writing to marketing and everything in between.
We're here to shine a light on real-world challenges and successes in independent publishing, straight from the people making it happen.
Every other week, we chat with Bay Area Independent Publishers Association members and industry professionals who are shaping the future of publishing and redefining what it means to go indie.
I'm Becky Parker Geist.
I'm Judy M. Baker.
And I'm Mike Van Horn.
Real stories, real challenges, real inspiration. Now, let's dive into what it takes to write, publish, and market your book, one story at a time.
Well, good day to all of you interested indie authors. This is Judy M. Baker for the Indie Authors Tell All podcast, and I have a very special guest. I have Dan Miller with us today, and Dan is the copyright detective. And if you have been curious about how do you protect your writing, especially in the times of AI snatching your work out of the air, Dan's going to give you some clues on what we can do. So, Dan, why don't you give us a little snippet about who you are and how come you are the copyright detective?
Oh, this is, I guess, my sixth career or so. So I have been at a lot of different things. Spent about 20 years in higher education. So I've got an educational background, and I have a technology background. So I go back to the old days where we had the 80-column cards punching holes in it to input programs into the computers. Unlike a lot of people, I embrace change. I enjoy change, although it's getting more difficult. The more I age, the slower I am in adapting. But my wife and I got involved in copyright issues back in the 90s when we were working at the NASA Classroom of the Future. And my job was to find ways to use new technology, and the internet hit while we're starting that project. So we were one of the first to find ways to put instructional materials on the internet. And part of that was getting permission to use copyrighted content. So we've been involved in copyright issues since the 90s, if you will. And then AI comes along and it kind of upsets the apple cart, if you will, in terms of what's going on. But we've been doing copyright clearance for since about 2006 or so. So we've been at this for a number of years. And we assist, first thing we usually do is try to find out what the copyright issues are. And we get inquiries. A lot of newbies will contact us and they say, I have this, can I use it or whatever. Then typically I try to talk them out of using a lot of things like short quotes and all that, because that's a common thing that newbies tend to do. They want to get credibility, so they put everything in quotations. So they're creating problems for themselves. But so it's a year ago, I actually did the first presentation on copyright and AI. So one of the sister organizations, what used to be the Colorado Independent Publishers Association, asked me to speak on the AI impact of copyright. So I've been doing that. You're my 10th podcast since February, and my 10th presentation is this Saturday to a writing group down in Dallas. So,
Oh, that is really exciting. And I actually worked in a physical library when I was in college. Started in high school and then in college. Yeah, we had Rolodexes and we had card catalogs. And I kept thinking, God, wouldn't it be really cool if you could magically go to the card catalog and then you could look up the stuff that was related to it. And back then, computers didn't fit in your hand. They fit in the size of the size of the room or the building that I was working in. And, if you couldn't, everything was cataloged, but with Dewey Decimal numbers, and that's how you found things. And if people misplaced them, they misfiled them, you couldn't find the books again. So I think we're compatible in that we are always curious about what's next and how does it work and how does it make it better. So I really do appreciate the fact that you were an educator first, then you started looking at how all of these things started fitting together, and then your legal background. And by the way, I think you have a book about this subject, if I'm not mistaken, because I think I've got a copy in my library.
It's a reference book, Copyright Clearance for Creatives. And so uh, we were doing workshops and we kept accumulating more instructional materials for the workshop. So we finally put
Right.
it all together in a book. Now, I've been contemplating doing a revision of that to put the AI piece. The problem is AI changes every week. So, I could get it ready and then tomorrow something new would happen. So the presentations, I'm doing blogs is a way I'm putting new information out instead. And
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the dust to settle because this is the Wild West in terms of technology change with what's happening with AI.
Well, if you've noticed, we don't watch a lot of broadcast television, but last night we were watching something. We were actually watching the recording of it. There were two commercials for Claude saying, "Oh, you know, selling is now coming. Commercials are now coming to your AI," which they are, and so that it's kind of is kind of a blessing and a curse. And I understand what you're saying about keeping up. This is just it's like accelerated growth right now with
Mm.
all of the shifts and changes. And yeah, every week I have to say, okay, am I updated? Am I updated? How has it influenced your writing though? Because you're aware of these issues. So how has it changed how you're, putting together your blogs and your presentations? Can you give us a little on that?
Yeah, it depends on what it is. So that's the problem with AI. So you can have AI generate everything for you, and if you do that, you can publish it however you want to, but it's not going to be copyrightable. So if AI generates it, it doesn't have copyright protection because the machine actually created. So no matter how many prompts you put in, you cannot copyright it. If you start with something you've done, and then
Mhm.
you have AI to tweak it, then that's potentially copyrightable. So if you're doing marketing materials and those, you may not be concerned at all about copyright. But if
Mhm.
you're doing a book, you certainly want to protect that. And so, there are lots of gray areas with AI use for that, and actually, I have a graphic that is a gradient that shows different uses of AI, um, from one extreme of it's all human and the other extreme where it's all machine. But, so one example of what I do, in LinkedIn, for example, if I'm gonna do a LinkedIn post, I'll
Yes.
create a LinkedIn post, and I belong to 20 some groups. So, you don't wanna send the same thing out to each group. So I'll go in and I'll ask AI to, modify this content based on, and I'll actually put in the actual LinkedIn group that it has in there, and it will tweak the language associated with that group, what they're interested in. And then I'll go in and I'll certainly, read everything that AI says in case it does something stupid, because it's still hallucinating like crazy. And, then I'll post it. So that's one way it helps me, very quickly get it out to a lot of different groups. It's basically the same content, but it's been modified to match that. And I'm not concerned about copyright of that, but even if I was, the change AI change is so small that that would be acceptable if I were to register blogs, for example, I
Right.
could do a collection of blogs. So, again, the things are, very relative. One thing, Judy, I wanted to mention, before we get off, I don't know if it's in your questions or not, but the Anthropic settlement is the biggie.
Yes.
That's an example of
Right.
if you write a book, that thing is still a moving target. And, you mentioned Claude.
Yes.
Claude is
Also
Anthropic.
probably by Anthropic, right?
Yes. So it's one of it's the culprit, if you will. Now I use Claude.
I
Uh,
do too.
And in fact, I was using Claude this week to help me remember some HTML code to tweak a web page.
Yes, me
And
too.
I could not get the theme to let me do what I wanted to do in terms of changing fonts and backgrounds and colors and all that. So I
Right.
had to go back to HTML code, and Claude would write examples of the code for me. So that's a good example of using AI. In the old days, I would Google it. Well, now when you Google it, you get a Google AI response. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a Mac user. I'm a Mac user, so I use Siri a lot. In fact,
Yes.
when my phone didn't light up. The other day, I asked Siri a question. They said, "Would you like to now start using ChatGPT for your Siri response?" So that is a huge change.
What? Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because you were so kind as you one of the things Dan did uh in preparation for the show, he sent in questions and he asked different agents and AI tools what the 5 most important questions are for someone who is an expert in copyright and how impacts AI has, made on copyrightability. I that's a now see, that is a mega word that right there. And you made me laugh because I'm just thinking, you and I both use tools. I'm on a Mac as well. And right now, my phone can do things my desktop computer can't. My iPad can't do some things because it doesn't have the most recent chip that they need for the horsepower to run AI. So we're kind of we're at a really interesting intersection of okay, do I have the vehicle to help me use that fuel? And also, is it harming me or protecting me? Um, I do have a question for you though.
Okay.
Because we're shifting from SEO, which is search engine optimization, to answer engine optimization, which is using the AI tools. Is there anything we need to be aware of in terms of, protecting ourselves so that we can be found without our content getting stolen?
Getting scraped.
Yep.
Your content's gonna be scraped no matter what.
So what do we do?
If it
What should we be doing?
if it's on the internet, it has been captured, period.
Okay.
So if you're doing a Facebook and you have your Aunt Sally's picture on Facebook, Aunt
Mhm.
Sally has been scraped and she's on the AI platforms, in their databases, in their training. So virtually anything that's on the internet, has been captured and some of these now there's a new thing out that's called RAG, and it's where the AI platform actually goes out and does a live search for you in the moment and captures things and gives it back to you. So Perplexity's got a couple of lawsuits against it. That's one I use. Um, and it will actually take screenshots, and part of the response it gives to the prompt, it will show you those screenshots that it took off of websites. So it's clearly infringing on the websites. I filed a registration for a PowerPoint presentation that I did back in
Yeah.
April, and I had put some of those images in there, and the examiner I was actually talking to the examiner on the phone. He said,
Yeah.
"Those look like photographs," and that was bothering me, so I started investigating, and sure enough, Perplexity had captured photographs from websites and fed it back to me in the responses. So that's clearly copyright infringement.
Oh
So
my gosh.
so you have to be very careful on a lot of levels of what AI gives you back, in terms of
Yeah.
whether it has infringed or not. But
I have no idea, and I saw that prompt come up yesterday because I was doing something in Perplexity, I sort of ignored it because I didn't understand it. Well, you're bringing up so many things. What should we be doing?
oh, to protect
Because
yourself.
you're the expert. What should we be doing as best we can to protect ourselves and, kind of like hardening against the onslaught?
And it goes back to the Anthropic case, because the Anthropic case, they pirated 7 million works, but the settlement is only estimating that maybe 500,000 books will actually end up being in the settlement because the other books were not registered properly with the U.S. Copyright Office. So they're not entitled to a settlement for that. So the key is, and if the audience doesn't remember anything else, remember this: you need to submit an application for registration within 3 months of publication. If you do, that starts the clock. So that gives you the protection. So with Anthropic, if you did not file registration within within 3 months, you're not going to get a settlement from Anthropic. So that's the main thing. So file registration for copyright of the content that you want to protect. That enables you to bring a lawsuit in federal court, for example, if someone infringes. So it's the enforceability issue. That's the only way you can enforce it, is to actually register the work. So technically, your stuff is under copyright protection as soon as you create it, but you can't enforce it unless you registered the work. So that's the key. Now, you can register blogs, for example. You can do a group of blogs. So it depends on the content that you have.
Yeah.
You can send batches, photographs. You can send batches of those and do them under a single registration. A book, obviously, is going to be a standalone work that you have. So right now, that's the first thing. The second thing, and I'll point out 2 organizations. One is Authors Guild, and the other is the Independent Book Publishers Association. Both of those are engaged in lawsuits and everything else against these AI platforms. And Authors Guild has been doing that for a long time. Plus, if you're a member of Authors Guild, they offer free legal services. So they'll look at things like contracts, if you will, and copyright issues, and even dispute resolution for that. So those are 2 really good organizations to get involved with in terms of finding ways to enforce your rights and help protect your rights. Those are 2 good organizations to be active with. Plus, of course, BAIPA and the other regional organizations are all over the country. So depending on where people are, of course, everyone's doing Zoom anymore. It's easy to be a member. I'm a member, I think, of 4 or 5 different of these groups from coast to coast. And then here in Colorado, where I am, active with this one as well.
Right.
So you have to be aware. First of all, be aware of your rights, but then how to enforce the rights, and starting with the registration. The other is to be aware of how you're using AI, and everything that you do with AI is not, you can protect some of the things, and a lot of the things you cannot. So there's a huge issue. It's getting into a lot of the ethics of publishing and what you're publishing and how you use AI and how you disclose the use of AI. So that's another big thing that's happening is when and how should you disclose? Are you required to disclose AI use? And in a lot of instances, you are. The U.S. Copyright Office requires you to indicate if you have generated content in your book using AI, and Amazon requires that as well if you've generated content for that. So those are other things to be aware of, is keep track of how you used AI and be prepared to disclose how you used it very specifically.
Okay.
As an author, you know that writing a book is not easy, and that publishing and promoting it can be even harder. Wish you had fellow authors and professionals you could learn from, who would give you encouragement and guidance to get through the tough spots? That's what we offer at the Bay Area Independent Publishers Association, or BAIPA. We're a volunteer-run educational community dedicated to elevating the art and the business of independent publishing. Not in the San Francisco Bay Area? No worries. We have members from all over, and we meet monthly on Zoom. For just $10 a month, you get full membership benefits. Whether you're writing your next novel or children's book, launching a nonfiction book, building your author brand, or working with indie authors, BAIPA gives you the tools and the network to publish smarter, grow faster, and thrive independently. Visit BAIPA.org. That's BAIPA.org and join us today. Become part of a community that understands all the challenges of indie publishing and helps you get through them.
You're making it a very clear case. We need to follow the regulations and the rules. Approximately how long does it take if I'm writing a book right now, which I am, I actually have 2 books in progress. Um, if I'm getting ready to publish them, when do I make the application for copyright?
Within 3 months of actual publication.
So either before or after it's actually available.
Actually, it's legal terms in terms of publication. So if you
Okay.
send copies out to family and friends, that's not publishing. So it has to be publicly available.
Okay.
So, for example, in the case of, I did get a copyright for the PowerPoint presentation, for example.
Mhm.
And what made it public, I did it to a private group on Zoom, but what made it public is they put a video recording of the presentation.
Okay.
That was a publication date. So that triggered it. So when your book is posted on Amazon, it's
Really?
publicly available, and whatever the start date of that is, when it went live that you could buy it, that's day 1 of the publication date. So you have 3 months from there to get it registered. You can do it in advance, but then you have to redo it when it's actually available. So
That's where it's going. Yeah, that's what I was trying to understand because I was the editor of a book recently, and so I was wondering about that, and so copyright is one thing, Library of Congress registration is another. So basically, do the book, put it up for sale, then apply for the copyright, and then you could just update that. If you're self-publishing, you would just update your copyright page inside your book, correct?
well, you could have it ready to go. You know, you put the copyright notice on the copyright page in the
Mhm.
book anyway, so it's copyrighted 2026, for example,
Oh,
whatever the date is
yeah.
on that. Now it takes a while. I had, I mentioned a gradient. I have a gradient graphic that I created for the PowerPoint presentations. Now
Uh-huh.
it's a, two-dimensional artwork, so I actually submitted that for copyright registration to see if I could get it, and it took 9 months before I finally got that.
Oh.
So I don't know why it stalled. Usually, it's a lot quicker than that in the copyright.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why it stalled, but eventually they denied it, or they didn't have enough originality for that. So
Okay.
the graphic, you cannot copyright an idea. So I had a graphic representation of an idea. It's not like a painting, but it was a graphic that you could create. That I created in PowerPoint, for example. Um, so you don't know what's going to be approved until
Uh-huh.
you submit. That's the other thing.
Boy, it's kinda tricky, and I know too, I used to be in a group, of inventors, and
Mm.
the whole process of getting a provisional, uh,
That
patent and all of that, things things are moving at very, unpredictable speeds through the government right now, if they're moving at all, so I think that's really difficult. Well, I'm gonna ask you 2 questions here. The first one is, what would you do differently knowing what you know now, and how does that influence publishing your book? How would you do it differently now than you did when you originally published it?
Well, there are mechanisms out now, where you can update the manuscript, if you will, or the book, the layout very quickly or on demand. So I'm actually looking at that option
Uh-huh.
and relying on the ebook and being able to update the ebook version at will. Now we have an ebook version of our copyright book, if you will. It's hadn't been updated, hadn't needed to be updated until 2023 when ChatGPT hit the scene for that. So part of it is being able to update uh, with ebooks, but also what I'm actually doing now is I'm supplementing with blogs on the website. So it's using multiple mechanisms, if you will, to get it out. But a blog is a good way to do that. And the other thing I'm doing is I'm putting posts on LinkedIn to the different audiences, and then cross-linking those back to the blogs that I have for more details. So it's a matter of cross-connecting these things, if you will, to try to get the information that's out there. The other thing is with organizations making recordings of podcasts like this one, but also
Yes.
of the PowerPoints, is I have links to their recordings of those as well. So the presentations are really the most effective way in the podcast to bring updates in terms of what's going on, because it's with every presentation I've done, I've had to change a large percentage of the content based on, for example, the legal standing of court cases and all of those, and new rulings that are coming out, and new documents coming out of the Copyright Office. So you have to be able to respond pretty quickly. I've had to change some presentations 2 hours before the presentation. Some news would break, and I'd have to go in and change a slide with that. So
Yeah.
uh, being flexible, and most people think about it, when you write a book, you're casting it in concrete. Well, you don't need concrete. At best, you need Jello for a book anymore. Has to be able to change fairly quickly.
You just gave me such a good visual. I'm gonna have to play around. I use Gamma a lot to generate AI images, and that one I think is funny. I'll have a concrete, like the tablets, that
Yeah.
down, and then we'll have Jello over here on the other side. That is so brilliant. Well, Dan, when should people reach out to you in their publishing process? When does it make the most sense? I mean, hopefully before they're in trouble, but how can, when would you like them to reach out, and how would you like them to reach out to you?
The worst case is when the book is already in print. I've had that happen, and I've had people, now we're at the mercy of the copyright holder in terms of getting permission. Uh, so as soon as you become aware of that there may be a problem, get in touch with me. People will do it when they're early on in development. They'll say, I have a memoir and I have 30 photographs of family members and blah, 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 blah. And I have all these song lyrics and everything else. So as soon as you become aware of there are copyright issues of using other people's stuff, period, get in touch with me, and I can save a lot of headache. Uh, Song lyrics are the worst for baby boomers like us. They want to use all these song lyrics, and they don't realize you need permission. So I literally try to talk people out of using song lyrics.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
worst case scenario, Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, uh, Freddie and 4 of his colleagues were the writers. There were 2 publishers involved in that. Freddie passed on. He gave his rights to 5 other people. So when I got permission finally, there were 11 different owners of the 100% of the permission needed to be able to use the song lyrics. Or
Oh, that is, that's wild.
Yeah. And every situation's different. So, they just need to come to me and say, hey, I want to do this, this, and this. And can I do that? And usually it's always, well, maybe, and under these circumstances, or it could be a hard no, or it could be a hard yes. So everything is very conditional with copyright, unfortunately.
Wow. There's so much to keep track of, and now we've got this other layer on top of it. So you have a very easy URL to remember, and I think it's kind of right there in your title. It's the
Yes.
copyrightdetective.com, correct?
Thecopyrightdetective.com.
Yeah.
I was chatting with a marketing person several years ago, and we're describing what we were doing. And I was saying, it really is detective work for that. And she said, well, that must make you the copyright detective. Bam, there it was.
Oh,
Got
that sounds like a Judith Briles thing. Was it?
It wasn't Judith. Now we know Judith well for a long time. That was another marketing friend of ours. Um, but anyway, Mary Waleski actually came up with the phrase. Now, but it's a federally registered trademark. So we do have the federal trademark for that.
Well, I think that is just brilliant. Any last words you'd like to share with the audience?
Uh, yes. If you have a book that you think is pirated, you need to check it out and you need to file a claim by March the 30th if you think you're going to be eligible for a settlement for that. And the Authors Guild has a great place to look at that to find that out. So you have to go in and you have to check out your book by title and see if it is one of those that has been recognized as being pirated. So that's the lawsuit with Anthropic, is pirating.
Okay.
And if your book is in there, then you do need to file a claim. So even though you're eligible, if you do not file a claim, you will not collect anything. And right now it's $3,000 per title that may have been infringed, minus the legal fees, and that's all. And still in the courts, the judges are still deciding how much the lawyers are going to get. But you know, I've heard several authors say, well, I have like 10 books that may have been pirated. Well, 3,000 times 10, that's starting to become a serious pocket change for that. But do check that out, and you have to take the initiative of filing a claim yourself for that. And like I say, the Authors Guild, I've got, let me click. I've actually got my PowerPoint is behind you here. Let's see if I can. It's anthropiccopyrightsettlement.com is the website.
Hey, well, that's really, really helpful. And I think one of the things that I felt when you first presented, when I first met you, I was so blown away because you're not hysterical. You are very matter of fact. And you say, well, here are the things you need to pay attention to. Watch out, do these things. And some of what was the common practice before the Anthropic suit was, well, once you published your stuff, it should be protected. But now we have to take the next step always of registering our material if we want it to be protected in the United States. And we didn't even get into if you're publishing outside the United States because the rules aren't the same. So you are just you're one of my best treasures and assets. And I'm really glad you're part of this group. You're so generous. And I hope this has been helpful for our audience. I know it's been helpful for me. And Dan, you are a delight. And I wish you the best at spreading the word on how we can protect our intellectual property out
That's
in the
it.
world. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Indie Authors Tell All, a podcast from the Bay Area Independent Publishers Association.
Be sure to subscribe so you never miss our bi-weekly conversations with authors, publishers, and experts who keep indie publishing vibrant.
You can learn more and join our community at BAIPA.org. That's BAIPA.org. You don't have to live in the Bay Area to join us, since we're live on Zoom for all our events. You can email your questions and feedback to us at podcast@BAIPA.org. That's podcast@BAIPA.org. Thanks so much for joining us on the Indie Authors Tell All podcast.